Hello,
Hi, Paul.
you can introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Nadrian Seeman, and I'm a professor of chemistry at New York University in New York City.
Okay, you can tell for us about your experience with DNA and nanotechnology or nanotechnology in another fields also. I don't know.
Okay, so I never planned actually to be doing nanotechnology. I work with DNA and sometimes RNA, and well, I've been working now for about 35, 36 years with those molecules, with DNA in particular. And what I realized was that we could do things with those molecules on the nanoscale. So if we look at the first slide,
Yes, is in the screen here.
yeah, here too. So on the first slide, everybody can see that it's a DNA there's a DNA molecule there on the left, and partly red, partly white, because it's a double helix. There are two strands of DNA. But we're not going to talk about DNA from a genetic point of view today. We're going to talk about DNA as a molecule that we can make things out of. So you can see there's this big label on the top. DNA is a nanoscale object. Its diameter is about 2 nanometers, and its helical repeat, and there's one being shown there, is about roughly 3.5 nanometers. The business end of DNA, however, is actually, let me shut this off. The business end of DNA is is the bases that we're seeing edge on in that double helix, but they're shown on the right full on, so we can see that there are two kinds of DNA base pairs. There's A and T, and then there's G and C. They're both about the same size when compared to each other, and they're held together by weak interactions called hydrogen bonds, those little arrows in the middle. Now, the thing is that if we put an A on the red strand and a T on the white strand, then they will come together. The same with the G and the C. So if we take these molecules and put them together, and if you look closely, you'll see that they're going to mesh together. We can get them to cohere to make an individual, a complex, a single complex of molecules shown in the middle there, where you just make more base pairs, and they'll hold together under the right condition. If we want, we can strengthen this by ligating them, but we don't do that very much anymore. The next slide shows the basic concept of what we do, and it's called structural DNA nanotechnology, combining the notion of branch DNA with sticky ends to make objects and lattices and even nanomechanical devices. And I'll talk a little bit about all three of those. So on the left, we have this branch molecule. It's got 4 sticky ends on it. X in its complement X prime, Y in its complement Y prime, and then we can put them together to make a little quadrilateral there, and we can see that it's quite possible to do that. But in addition, there are a whole bunch of sticky ends on the outside, so we don't have to stop with just this little quadrilateral. We can go on to make a lattice, namely a crystal, not just in 2 dimensions, but in 3, as I'll show you. And that's what we actually do when we practice the structural DNA nanotech. Now, the next slide shows the very first thing that we made. That's it. Yes?
Next slide is the strict.
Sorry?
This slide is easily programmed affinity.
Right.
Okay.
It's easily programmed. The next slide, slide 5.
Uh-huh.
Shows the very first thing we made, now over 25 years ago. It was a DNA cube-like molecule. And that's shown in this slide. And you can see that it's basically just a whole bunch of strands that are held together by the fact that they're helices and they can't come apart. So we were able to make this thing. It was complex, and we made it. This was the first object ever made from DNA that wasn't just a linear molecule, but was indeed a 3-dimensional construct. So you can see it looks just like a cube. We don't know the shape of this one, but we do know that both the way in which the strands are linked to one another, and we know also the way it's branched. Slide 6, the next one, shows a more complicated structure that we made. It's a 14-sided structure called a truncated octahedron, and we made that with a slightly more sophisticated approach. But again, we only know the connectivity. We don't know the actual shape of this thing. The shapes are idealized. The next thing that we did was to try to make things that were going to be stiff, because then we would know their structures. So on slide 7, you can see that we know that some of the structures that we've already shown are indeed stiff. So in the middle row there's one called DAE and another one called DAO on the right, and in the middle is a DAE plus J. Those are the kinds of molecules that we use to make 2D lattices. The DAE plus J actually doesn't usually have that little extra bit of DNA pointing to the right. Usually it's pointing at us out of the screen. So if we put all these guys together using sticky ends, we can start thinking about making a lattice. And that's shown on slide 8, where here we have 2 flavors of that type of molecule, which we know are stiff again. And one is A, that's just a simple molecule, and B has that extra domain sticking out of the plane at us. And that's the little black dot there that does that. Now the sticky ends are shown geometrically here, so you can tell that they're all complementary, and that if we make a lattice of this thing, we make this 2-dimensional crystal, we'll get something that looks like what it looks like on what's shown on the bottom. Namely, we should have a striped feature every 32 nanometers, because each of these guys is 16 nanometers in width here. So it's slide 9. And this is an image generated from an atomic force microscope. So this is a device that has like a little needle, really little needle, that's bouncing along over a very small field, and it tells us what the topography is of the molecules that are there, what's high and what's low. And we can see pretty clearly that the objects here have a striped characteristic to them, just like in the schematic. And if we measure the separation there, it turns out to be about 32 nanometers. So we can actually do this in 2 dimensions. I'm not particularly interested in 2 dimensions, so a lot of people are. I'm more interested in 3 dimensions. So if we go to the next slide, slide 10, you can see what we've got there. Namely, there's a motif that's actually a 3-dimensional motif. I'll show you a better schematic of it in a moment, that actually will form a 3-dimensional crystalline environment when we put it all together with sticky ends. So the next slide shows a real-world picture of 3 metal cylinders that are just stacked together, and this is actually the shape of that triangle I showed you. So it's not a flat triangle. It's a triangle that in 3 dimensions actually goes from over and under, over and under, over and under. You can see that both in the more or less yellow and in the white images that we have here. The next slide shows crystals. So the next slide is 12. The next slide shows crystals that we made from that triangle. We had little sticky ends in the triangle, and we just brought them all together in a predictable fashion. So most people, when they make crystals, particularly of macromolecules, they put stuff in a pot, and then they try to hope that they're going to get something out that looks like a crystal. And in this case, we actually know what the crystals are going to look like ahead of time on the molecular level. So it's very exciting for us. This was the first case of a predicted crystal structure that we were able to make here. I'll show you the structure in a moment, but let's just look at these crystals. These are macroscopic crystals, things you can see with your naked eye. The little scale bars in all of the images are about 2/10 of a millimeter. So you can see that pretty easily. The purple one down the left is really very big on that scale. The one on the lower right is an iodinated molecule, which we need to do in order to actually determine the crystal structure. Slide 13 shows the molecular structure of the DNA triangle we made. It's called the tensegrity triangle. And you can see it's 2 terms of DNA. The part on the top row on the left is in front of the screen, and on the right is behind the screen, but then we have another piece in front, and it goes like that around this 3-fold symmetric object. So we are able to do that. Now the next slide, slide 14, shows how the various triangles are held together in the lattice. And this is exactly as we predicted. I don't know if you can see the little magenta point in the middle.
Yeah.
But in fact, that's where the sticky end is. So it's actually held together with the sticky end in the structure. If we go to the next slide, we can see what get a better feel for the crystal structure by looking at the environment of a single triangle. So if we look at the middle triangle, we can see that each of its 3 edges, in fact, is extended. The red edge extends to a triangle in the back and comes up to a triangle in the front, going from right to left. The same thing is true of the green triangle, the green double helix going from the upper left to the lower right, and the yellow double helix that's going from the lower left sort of to the upper these long red helices and green helices and yellow helices. Now if we go on to slide 16, we can show a different selection of the molecules. And these are the 8 triangles that flank a rhombohedron. So the rear vertex of the rhombohedron is it's flanked by a red triangle. It's at the far rear. And then that red triangle is connected to 3 yellow triangles that are in fact somewhat closer to us. They flank vertices of this rhombohedron somewhat closer to us. And then they're connected to green triangles that are closer to us yet. And then we left out another red triangle that's in the front, just for clarity there. But you can see we've got a cavity. So it's a cavity that we're working these days to put things in so that we can do various experiments with guests in a crystalline environment. Now, one of the nice things about, the next slide, slide 17, before I get to that, just shows the whole crystalline environment here. Again, it's the same picture you just saw. So there's a really dim triangle at the rear and 3 less dim ones a little closer to us and 3 bright ones closer to us yet. But you can see the whole way in which all of this now forms a crystalline arrangement. So it's crystal, it fills space, and it has a very good structure to it. For those of your listeners who don't know exactly what a rhombohedron is, it's just a cube where you either squashed or extended one of the body diagonals of the cube. The next slide, slide 18, shows that we have control over the molecules that are actually forming the crystal, so that we can put more than one in the crystallographic repeat. And here we have a picture of our same rhombohedron, but now every edge is flanked by a triangle of a different color. So on one end there's always a green one, and on the other end there's always a red one. So every edge is that way. So we can use that chemistry, because it's different chemistry, they're different molecules, even though they look pretty much the same, to actually affect the property of the crystal. So the next slide, slide 19, shows that we were able to take a pink dye, CY3, that's its name, and put it on the A molecule on the left, or on the B molecule on the right, or on both of them in the middle, and make a pink crystal. On the bottom of that same slide, we took a blue dye called CY5 and did the same thing. We can make a blue crystal by putting it on A, on B, or on both. But then in the middle row, what we did was to put the pink molecule on the A molecule, put the pink dye on the A molecule, and the blue dye on the B molecule on the left, or on the right, we reversed those, and we can make a purple one. So we can affect a macroscopic property of the crystal by doing that. So we have control over what goes on in the solid state just by being able to control these features of the molecule. The next slide, slide 20, just shows that we can control things in the nanotechnology world using this same motif, but now we have a somewhat more robust edge on our triangle. So this is a set of different species where instead of having one double helix for each edge, we have a pair, sort of like we had when we made that 2D lattice. And it's a much bigger triangle. This is 8 turns. So if we go on to slide 21, you can see that we can make a 2D array. So we're only going to work in 2D here. And we can make that 2D array either with one tile, like we did in the original structure I showed you, or we can make it with 2 tiles, like we did in the red and the green structure that I showed you. On the next slide, you can see what we've done here. Slide 22 shows that here's the schematic of that molecule. And what we've done was to take this thing and propagate it in the horizontal direction. And we've propagated in the lower left red and blue and magenta, and the other it's green and blue and brown. And then if you look at the lower left, you can see that we've got a simplified view. We've got a 5 nanometer particle talking to the green, blue, and brown molecule. It's attached to that. And the red, magenta, and blue molecule has a 10 nanometer particle. So that should lead to a checkerboard pattern shown on the right. And then if we go to slide 24, you can see that this is a transmission electron micrograph of that. And you can see we actually have made a little checkerboard arrangement of nanoparticles using this approach. Now, the other thing that we wanted to do, of course, with NA, was to make machines. So the next slide shows the very first machine that we made it that we reported at the end of the last century, and it's shown over here. So on the top, we have a molecule that has two of these two double helical motifs on either end. On the left, this is red and blue, and on the right, there's a different one that's red and blue, and they're connected by a yellow motif. So the yellow motif has a special sequence, and it's able to undergo a structural transition. So that most of the time, if it's in an ordinary solution, it'll look the same as the rest of it. As you can see on the top, it all looks like the same DNA structure. It's only a question of whether we've colored it blue or red or yellow. But if we go over to the right side of the middle, and you see we can add a special additive called co-hexamine. That will change the structure of the yellow region. The yellow region has a special sequence there that's sensitive to the co-hexamine. And when we add it, then it'll go to a different structure, which is in fact a left-handed structure. It's still made of the same backbone, but it now organizes itself in a left-handed fashion. That's called zDNA. And when we do a transition, you'll see that the lower domain on the upper molecule is in fact moved from the bottom over there in the upper molecule to the top on the lower molecule. So we've made our first little nanorobot out of DNA. The next slide shows a better, this is slide 26, a better nanorobot because, or a nano machine, because this one is sequence specific. So I can put a bunch of different machines in the same solution and address them individually. So on the left, I have a more complex motif that is shown there, and it's held in position by these two green strands in the middle. And hanging off of those green strands out into the solution is what's called a toe hole, and that if you put the complement to each of those green strands, the horizontal portions, into the pot, we'll pull it out of there, and we can put in the yellow strands on the right. Now you'll notice that the tops of these molecules are the same, but the bottoms are actually reversed by a half turn, and that's the basis of the device. So if we go to the next slide, that's 27, we can see that again we added the complement to the green strands on the left in step 1, and we can pull out those two green strands. So we have a kind of naked frame at the top, and then we can add the yellow strands to it, and we switched it from what we were calling the PX state to what we call the JX2 state, which is the reversal of those bottom double helices. And then around the bottom, step 3 and step 4, we can actually send the machine back to its initial state. So we can get that thing to work. And the next slide shows how we demonstrated this. That's slide 28. The next slide shows how we demonstrated this using the atomic force microscope, so you actually see the thing in motion. So what we did was to connect a series of trapezoidal half hexagons with the machine, and the green state at the top. All these guys are parallel. We slide 29, excuse me, we can see what that looks like in successive cycles on the in the atomic force microscope. So we can see in successive cycles, we start off with them parallel, and the next cycle has a zigzag structure, and the next one has them parallel again, and then the next one has them zigzag again. So we can switch them back and forth yet again. Now, the next slide shows probably the most elegant thing we've made yet, which is a nanoscale assembly line. So this is a fairly complex thing, and I'll just take you through the way it works. So we start at the upper right of the schematics. On the far right is a full-color atomic force micrograph of what's happening here. And so this is on slide 30. And in the column next to that are a series of different arrangements that we have. So we start off with 3 cargo stations. They're labeled JX2, JX2, and JX2, but they're labeled as C1, C2, and C3. And those 3 cargoes are a 5 nanometer gold particle for C1, a pair of coupled 5 nanometer particles for C2, and then a third machine with C3 on it that is a 10 nanometer gold particle. So they're all different. And whatever's happening in that column can be seen on the right in full color AFM. So we start off, all 3 of these devices are in the off state. Now what's going to happen is there's a little red tensor triangle there at the bottom of this machine. And it's going to walk across this field of DNA. It's called DNA origami. I won't go into detail there. It's the notched rectangle. And the very first thing we're going to do in step 1 is turn the first device from off to on. So now we've got the C1 pointing in the opposite direction. And when it points there, it will immediately transfer to our little tensor triangle, which sort of behaves like the chassis of a car going through an automobile assembly line. So if we look at the result of step 2, we see we've now transferred the cargo to the little assembly line, to the little chassis that's there. And then if we go through step 3 and step 4, we'll move that to being underneath the second station. And you can see that what that looks like in the AFM on the right there in the thing labeled III. And then we can do the same operation again with the second cargo. We can go through step 5 and move it into the on position, and it will be attached to the chassis-like thing. And then in step 6, as we see, and then we can walk that along until it's on the third station down in step 5, Roman numeral 5 after step 8. And then we can do it yet again, and all 3 of these have now been attached to our central chassis here, and then we can release the product. Now, if we go to the next slide, slide 31, we can see that, in fact, we have many options as to what our product's going to be, because this is all programmable. So, depending on whether or not we actually turn on station 1, station 2, and station 3, there are 8 different trajectories through this assembly line. So we can either, and the products are shown on the right, where we can start off adding nothing if we do everything in the off state, or we can add the 5 nanometer particle, or the pair of coupled 5 particles, or the 10 nanometer particle, or we can add the pair of coupled 5 nanometer particles and the 5, or the 5 and 10, or the coupled 5s and 10, or all 3, as I showed you in detail, as we go down here, as we go down a list of options that we can do. And then the next slide, slide 32, actually shows what we lower right can indicate that we can actually make all 8 of the products. Now, of course, that's again a 2D assembly line, and we really like to be able to do things in 3D. So slide 33 shows how we can do that. So we're back with our old friends, the blue dye and the red dye. CY3 is the red dye and CY5 is the blue dye. And now we're looking at the DNA crystal here. This is the same crystal we've been talking about. We have a little special strand that's just coming out of the 10-segmented triangle that we made it out of. So if you look on the lower left, we have state A, and it's just a colorless crystal. It's all the same crystal we're looking at here. Then what we can do is we can add a strand bearing CY3, the red strand, and we can wind up coloring the crystal into a red. And then we can take that strand out, the same way we took the strands out of the PXJX device, and we can then do that and put in the blue strand again, and we can keep cycling this device as much as we want. It's a little bit like a traffic light that has 3 states, and we oscillate between them, but of course we're controlling things on the molecular level. The final slide just shows how the field of DNA nanotechnology has grown from our initial work in the early 1980s. In fact, this thing starts in 1990, and it goes only through 2011, but you can see this field has been growing rapidly. Some of the structures that I've talked to you about are shown here, and there are others that are not quite the same sorts of things that the guy who made this slide decided were important things to add on the slide. So that's the story that I have to tell you about us in DNA nanotechnology, because that's really the field in which we work. I didn't know it was going to be nanotechnology. At some point, somebody told me it was going to be nanotechnology, and I said, well, gee, that's really nice. For those of you familiar with Moliere's Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, there's a man in there who's trying to become sophisticated, having already become rich, and he has a tutor who tells him that he's speaking prose. He says, my goodness, I'm speaking prose, how wonderful. And that's sort of how I responded when I was doing nanotechnology.
Okay. We can have a small debate, because I am not a specialist in these things, that you put some details that I had to see again to understand more. But if you agree, I have some general questions, that is from people that is not a specialist in DNA. My first question is possible you cut some part of the DNA and substitute for another?
Not in our study. I mean, there are many sequences of DNA that will fulfill
Põe a imagem dele.
Let me point out that all the DNA that we use is synthetic DNA, and that the DNA found in the cell in biology really can't do anything except under very strict supervision, cellular supervision, that forms branches. The DNA in the cell is just linear DNA, like that very first slide I showed you. So yes, there are any time it's a double helix of say a turn long, there are 4 possibilities for every position. So it'd be 4 to the 10th power, 2 to the 20th, about a million different sequences could do the same thing. But for our purposes, which are structural, it doesn't make any difference. We're not coding for genes, we're not trying to do other things like that.
Yeah. I put this question because I see many news, not about DNA, but you can buy car, you can make a recall of the cars, no? That is produced with some problems. So the industry put for the consumers that they have to recall. And is possible recall in terms of the DNA?
So you mean a cow like a cow?
No, recall. When you buy a car and the car have problems, you can recall the car.
Recall?
Yeah.
So what's the question?
The question is if it is possible you think about the recall in terms of the DNA.
Not really. If we don't like the molecule we've made, we just make a different molecule. We just throw it away.
So the nanotechnology until now doesn't contribute to put the possibility of the recall in DNA.
To recall it? No. I mean, you know, the DNA is not coding for anything in particular that has a particular property. There are many DNA sequences that can all do the same thing in nanotechnology, and we just choose ones that happen to be convenient for us because they come together better. And if they come together well enough and do what they're supposed to do, that's it. There's no reason to spend a lot of effort trying to fix a little piece. It's not like a living person or a living animal or a living plant where you want to improve it. If there's something wrong with it, it's sort of like you made a bad wastebasket or a bad transistor or something. You just throw it out and get a good one.
Yeah. You think that the nanotechnology can contribute to skip some bottleneck in the DNA experience or research?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of purposes for our DNA constructs. One of the things that we want to do is to use them to scaffold nanoelectronics in one way or another. And the other thing we want to do is to use them as scaffolding to host important biological surfaces, not DNA so much as various kinds of receptors, and then use that system to investigate whether or not there are ways in which we can develop drugs against those surfaces that are pathological. So we have functions for our DNA molecules, and that we expect is going to be value from that.
Okay, and you have budget to do your research, or it's your area of the research is not have so much money to do the investigation?
Never enough.
Not enough.
Never enough.
No.
No. Right now, I mean, there are a lot of people doing what I just talked about, okay? My last count, there are a little over 275 labs worldwide doing DNA nanotechnology. Every lab has several people in it, and all those people have to be supported somehow. So it takes a lot of money to do science.
And to do your research or something like is very expensive.
No, the DNA itself is quite cheap. We work on a pretty small scale, and it's so most of what we do only uses picomoles to nanomoles of material. So a billionth of a mole or a trillionth of a mole, and sometimes less. Usually around a trillionth, and so that isn't much. And DNA, is a molecule for which there has been a lot of demand, so that there has been a lot of effort devoted to making it cheaply. In the same way that if you're, what time are you in? Are you in Rio or Sao Paulo?
Yes, São Paulo.
Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that in Brazil, it's cheaper to go from Rio from Sao Paulo to Rio than it is to go to someplace like Nepal or whatever, because there's more demand
Mm-hmm.
for that route. I mean, here we would say the same thing about going from New York, where I am, to California. Everybody wants to go to California, but nobody wants to go to Kansas. It costs more to go to Kansas than it does to go to California because there's no demand.
Yeah.
The same thing is true with DNA. There's a lot of demand for DNA, so they've made DNA very cheap. When I first started this field, it cost maybe $300 per DNA unit, those little units with a base on it. And now it's about something of the order of 11 cents for quite a large quantity. We go down to 8 cents and sometimes even cheaper. DNA has become quite cheap, so it isn't very expensive to do our research in that regard.
Okay. And you think that the research in DNA puts some ethical problems or not?
No, absolutely nothing. Because this DNA does not interact with bioworld at all. It's just DNA. To most of the species out there, it doesn't have any kind of informational content that will be used to make new organisms. The only thing they would be interested in our molecules would be food.
Okay.
Bacteria would eat.
I know you have another compromise. So we have in the end of our program, I would like to tell you thank you so much for your interview. I think it's a very, very important area of the knowledge for us. So I hope in the near future, if you have another point to show for us, maybe he can do another interview.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you so much.